Okay, so this is what we were going to cover earlier. What we're going to look at is measuring learning, the way I measure learning, some of the principles around analytics, and we're also going to look at Tableau, which is a tool that we can use for pulling together lots of different data sources and basically stitch them together. We're going to look at why standardizing or standardization is important in the way you collect data, how we load that data into an analytics tool, how to transform that so that data from different sources talks to each other, how to join data together from different places, how to create variables. We'll build some views, then we'll take those views, build a dashboard, and perhaps look at how that data can be animated over time so that we can have rich presentations with our stakeholders. Okay, it's not going to cover any coding or formula creation, though we will use some formulas within this thing at a very high level, just to join the KPI information to the learning information. And this is something that every organization seems to struggle with. So we're looking at analytics primarily, and analytics is all about democratizing the data, allowing questions to be answered without any effort at all. But in order to do that, all analytics solutions actually need models. So the model I use is universal. It can be used across any industry within any organization. I've not found one yet where it can't be. And from a feedback point of view, after every learning event, whether that's online or in the classroom or peer-to-peer, we send a survey to people and ask them to voluntarily fill it out. And within there's 3 questions essentially. And those questions are, describe the experience in 1 word. How confident are you in what you've learned on a scale of 1 to 10, and why do you say that? Now, these 3 questions actually give us everything we need to know. They describe the experience in 1 word, gives us 2 really rich things to look at from an analytics point of view. 1, it gives us allows us to look at the proportion of positive words that people say and the proportion of negative words people say. This allows us to compare formats and different learning events over time, different topics, etc. And it also gives us actionable feedback because we know what those positive and negative things are. And when we ask how confident people are in what they've learned, this is different to the way many people measure the effectiveness of training, whereby many organizations will ask their learners to fill in a test, about what they've learned. I've conducted lots of analysis across tens of thousands of learners to actually find out if there's any correlation between how people answer in tests and their performance subsequent to the learning. And it transpires that there's actually a very weak correlation. If we simply ask them to self-score on how confident they feel, there's an incredibly strong correlation. So that 1 question is actually more powerful than any test that I've come across. And then, of course, we ask people why they say that and why they feel the way they do, just to get some context around it. So this is a survey that's been built in Google Docs, and it basically says, describe the experience in 1 word, how confident are you, and why do you say that? This data, when it comes out from Google Docs or whatever survey tool you use, whether that's SurveyMonkey or Typeform, etc., will come through to an Excel spreadsheet if you so wish. And the output of my one is in here. So we have the user ID. This could be an employee number, payroll number, what have you, the name of the course they attended, their age group. I also invite people to select their age banding. And then we have their how confident they felt, why they felt that way, and their 1-word descriptor. Very, very simple Excel spreadsheet, pretty easy to use. I also, one of the data sets we're going to be using, which is fairly key, is a performance data set. And within here, again, we've got the user ID. Now this, if you've used payroll number in your learner feedback one, you need payroll number in here. If you've used employee number in one, you need employee number in here. And essentially it says the week of the performance was recorded, the user ID, and in this case I'm looking at call center data. So I've got the number of calls that they took, that's in calls, how many seconds they spent on those calls, how many transfers they made, how many sales they made, etc. Sales over here in column N. Now, it's very important that I don't have, for instance, handling time or average handling time, a very common call center metric, which is the number of seconds spent on calls divided by the number of calls. That's average handling time. I have the calls and I have the seconds. And that's simply because when we put this into an analytics tool and we want to slice it by age group or by conference or by learning treatment or by month rather than week or by year, etc., we need to do those calculations on the fly. And that means we can't use pre-aggregated metrics. But what we can do, again, with a simple Excel spreadsheet that can be spat out of any performance system, automatically once a week, we have the numerator, denominator, and we can have as many metrics in here as we want, or as many things that make up the metric. So of course, if we were looking at absenteeism, we might have a number of days available to work, number of days absent, one divided by the other, gives us the absentee rate, etc. So these are the two key data sets I'm going to use within the file I sent through. There are other data sets, and you'll see how they stitch together as we go through this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Tableau, and this is the tool which allows us to stitch all of our stuff together. So I think I've opened the wrong window there, or shared the wrong window. Okay, that's fine. So within Tableau, I'm going to come over to connect to Microsoft Excel here and click that. Now, if we were hooking into an LMS or a third-party system, we can use APIs to do that, or XAPIs as they call them in L&D. We can hook into mainframe servers, data warehouses, so on and so forth. For this, we're doing everything in Excel, but the same principle applies. You would just choose the other format. So I'm going to double-click on Excel and load up our first file to build our data model, and that is course feedback. So I'm opening up, just double clicked on course feedback, and what that'll do is load in all of our data. On the left here, we can see that we've got the workbook course feedback, and if we come down, we've got the worksheet within there called learner feedback. So I'll pull that over, and what that will do is populate a table down here with all of our data in it, or all of our feedback data. Now remember, this is based on only 3 questions, so it's very low effort for the learner, and it's very low effort for us to actually set up in the first place. And once the form's built, it pretty much runs itself. We've got the data down the bottom here. One of the things we wanted to do was not just look at loading data, it was about transforming data. So when we pull together lots of different data sources from maybe an LMS and performance system and HR systems, things might be in a different format. So whether we're using Power BI or Tableau or SAS VA, we can quite easily change those formats. In Tableau, what I'm doing, scrolling along the bottom here to where it's got start date, and the system I use to capture the date of the feedback actually puts a timestamp on it. So we can see here at 2:54 in the afternoon on the 14th of March 2017, someone gave us feedback. Up at the top here it says ABC, and that's because it's text, and I want to change all of these to date. A very easy way to do it is just to click on the ABC, say date, and now every time the data loads in, whenever someone gives new feedback, the tool will automatically convert that to a date. It's quite important because in my other data sets, I have dates for dates rather than text for dates, and this just means I can join them up. What do I mean by joining them up? Okay, so I'm going to come back up to here and add, and I'm going to add in a sentiment lexicon. Now, a sentiment lexicon is a fancy way of saying I'm going to look at whether words are positive or negative. Okay, navigate to my desktop, wherever that is. Of course, it's there. This one, and sentiment lexicon. And what this is a list of words. So maybe excellent in column A, and in column B it'll say positive. In the next row in column A it might say rubbish, in column B it'll say negative. So it's just a 2-column table with positive and negative words. Now, because within learner feedback I've asked people to give a one-word descriptor of how they found it: interactive, informative. Down here we can say easy. Lots of people say NAs, that's fine, we can't do anything about that. Interesting, engaging, enthusiastic, fun, etc. All these words people have given us. These also appear within the sentiment lexicon that I've built up over time. There's lots of misspellings that people do. So what I'm going to do is join our sentiment lexicon, or the phrase column A in the sentiment lexicon, which is the word, to the word people have used to describe. And what that does is then allow us to automatically pull in the sentiment. It's a very easy way of doing sentiment analysis. What it's given me the option to do when I've come over here and pulled up sentiment lexicon is ask how I want to join this data. Now, if I select inner join, as the image might suggest, this will return only the records that appear in both my learner feedback table and my sentiment lexicon table. So if a word exists in the learner feedback which doesn't exist in sentiment lexicon, it won't return it, and vice versa. A left join will return all the records in learner feedback, whether or not they appear in sentiment lexicon, and only those in the sentiment lexicon where they actually match. A right join does the opposite, and a full outer join will just return everything from both tables. All the joins in this demo are left joins, so I'm going to select left join. And from the learner feedback, I'm going to select the field, which is describe that learning experience in one word. I'm going to connect that to phrase used. Now, to show how that actually works from a data point of view, is we've now got these two data sets which are joined. So here's the original feedback we have. Why do you say that? The person described it as amazing. If we scroll over to the right here, we can see actually that's positive. Someone down here said death by I know, that's a negative phrase. Difficult is negative down at the bottom there. Someone's putting a smiley face, it's positive. So we've now attributed a sentiment to all of these words, essentially, and all of our learners' feedback. What that means, because we've joined these, is I can now see sentiment, or the proportion of positive and negative sentiment by learner age, by course type, by course name, by word used, by whatever within these two data sets. So actually we can already do some quite powerful analytics just by asking 3 questions in the learner survey up front and joining it to a pretty basic sentiment lexicon, which you now have access to. I'm going to add in another table just now, and this is going to be Sky Weeks. And this is simply because there's a disconnect between the data I have in my learner feedback and my performance data, which we'll look at in a moment, in that within the learner feedback, we have the date someone gave the feedback, but from performance, in the performance spreadsheet I got from our management information area, that's got, that rounds it up by week. So I need to convert date to week. And within this file here, I've got a number of columns in Excel, one being date, one being the week number, one being the month, one being the year, etc. Quite straightforward. So again, it's going to be a left join, and from the learner feedback, I'm going to select the start date. I'm going to join the date from the learner feedback to the start date within this Sky Weeks file. And again, if we now look at the data underneath, when this finishes calculating, we've got all our feedback and we've got our sentiment on there as well somewhere. There's a sentiment, but we also now know that the 17th of the 5th was actually week 46. It was in May, it was the 4th quarter of the year, it was financial year 16-17, etc. So now what we can do is we can look at sentiment and confidence by age, by month, by quarter, by week, by whatever. So we've just taken a data set that allows us to answer 50 odd questions, and we can now answer hundreds of questions. But that's obviously not going to be good enough for us. So I'm also going to add in here the performance data. Now, the joy of having performance data in this format, just one flat Excel file, is that once you ask your management information or BI function for it, you give them this, this format, they should be able to automate it for you and you never have to bother them again. What this holds is the performance across 5 or 6 key metrics for within the business for every person within the business across a 12-month rolling period. That period is quite important because it lets us not only build analytics on people who have learned stuff, but it allows us to do predictive analytics, look at areas that might be underperforming in the business and get proactive with our learning interventions and all that sort of stuff. It also lets us look at speed to competency and all sorts of really great stuff that's quite advanced, which we won't cover in here, but it's pretty good. Also, by not limiting it to only the people who have undergone training, what we have in there then is a control group. So if we're looking at people who underwent training and we're looking at a specific metric for them, we can also look at that same metric for the same period of time for the people who didn't undergo training. And that gives us a control group. You know, it's all great saying we gave people training and performance went up by 2.5%, but if it went up by 2.5% for everybody, regardless of whether they got training or not, then actually the training didn't deliver anything. So again, it's going to be a left join, and from learner feedback, I'm going to take the user ID this time, and I'm going to join that user ID over there to the NT login, as it's called in the KPI data. NT login in this instance is user ID, but it's what it's named on a different system. And I'll just update this. Now, this is a big data set, so I think there's about 500,000 rows within this Excel spreadsheet, and what it will do is join that up. So we now have our feedback from this person here in location 28, whoever that was. They were 18 to 24 years old. We've got all their performance metrics here. They had 13 calls going out, they had 9 calls coming in. And of course, on that row at the top there, we can see they had classroom training. We know what course it was. We know what they said. They said it was amazing. They gave us positive feedback. And we know what week and everything that was in. So this is a very basic data model, but it is a universal data model which will work within any business and can be set up. And once this model's built, and I appreciate this is a bit of a dry section, you'll never have to do it again. This is now connected to those Excel spreadsheets. So as new feedback comes in or new performance data comes in, this now automatically will pull that through. So we never have to do anything with that model. Okay, so the way Tableau works is really weird in that if you've got an Excel spreadsheet and you want to put lots of graphs on a page, you just put lots of graphs on a page, and that's fine. Within Tableau, every graph you want to build or every table you want to build has to be on its own separate worksheet. Each of those worksheets then get stuck together to make a dashboard, and then we can stick those dashboards together to make a story. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it will make sense as we go through. So at the bottom, I'm going to select sheet 1 and start building stuff. Although this is a very simple model and we've got here quite quickly, you should hopefully see the richness that it brings very shortly. Apologies, I'm having a glass of wine as I do this because it's late at night here. Now, that's just going to take a while to do its calculations in the background. And then we shall build a sentiment engine first, simply because it's quite interesting, and it will show the power of asking that simple question of describe the experience in one word. It's probably the most powerful question we can ask. Okay, so here we have a blank worksheet. Within Tableau, we've got up the top here columns and rows, and we've got all the things that we can put in. So these are all the fields from the connected spreadsheets that we've just done. So from our learner feedback, we can pull in the description, the words used to describe the learning experience, the user ID of the people, their age, why do you say that, so on and so forth. We've got a sentiment lexicon down here, which has the sentiment and the phrase used, and down here below that we have Sky Weeks. At the bottom we've got things like the number of in-calls, out-calls, repeat customers, sales, transfers, all that call center stuff. And some measures around how did you find the learning experience and how confident you feel, and that was the scale of 1 to 10. So within here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over the phrase from the sentiment lexicon, the phrase used, and this should return all of the words that people have used to describe training over time. Very, very straightforward. And then after that, what I'm going to do is count how many times those words have appeared. So I'll pull this one up. Sorry, not likely sentiment. I'll pull up the phrase used. Up here. And I'm going to click on the little drop down next to it. And I'm going to say count that. Okay, so come down to measure, go on to count, click on there, and it'll tell me how many times those words have actually appeared. On the right here is your different types of table up in the show me. So I'm going to turn this into a fairly flat text table. So too sweet has appeared 54 times, amazing 36 times, so on and so forth. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a count of distinct user IDs, because that'll tell me how many people have used the words rather than how many times does it appear. So measure, count, distinct. There we are. So this is our data. One person's put in simple with sim in brackets, whatever that means. Two people misspelled absolute. Oh no, it is spelled correctly. So up on the top here within the show me, I'm going to select a tree map, which is this, this one here. And that just tells me that 2,745 people said good. So most people said good, or more people said good than informative and excellent. On this colour area, I'm going to pull over likely sentiment, which will tell us whether it was positive or negative. And I'm going to recolour that. So I've just clicked on the colour box. It's going to edit colours. And just to be rather cliched, I'm going to make positive green and I'm going to make negative red. Apply that. I'm going to pull the phrase used, or the likely sentiment, sorry, up to filters and drop it in there. I'm going to get everything that's null. Now, where nulls exist is this is where someone's put in a word that doesn't appear within my sentiment lookup. So maybe one person has misspelled a really obscure word once, and that's not going to affect any of our results. So I'm just going to get rid of it. What I can also do is pull over, so this, what's your user ID distinct count, is create another measure. So I'm going to pull this over to tooltip. What a tooltip is in Tableau is when you hover over it, the things that come up, this white box. I'm going to change the this attribute here of what's your user ID. I'm going to make that a measure, so count distinct. And then I'm going to change that distinct count at the bottom here, just clicked on it again, come down to quick table calculation and say % of total. So if I hover over good, I know that 16.95% of our learners said good, whereas only 3.32% of people said it was amazing. Over in negative stuff, 1.25% of people said it was quick. A lot of people, 168 people said it was boring, so on and so forth. So we can very quickly see what people are saying about our course. So that's our first sheet, and we'll call that sentiment down at the bottom here. And I'm going to create a new worksheet. Within this worksheet, we will say, we'll pull over again the likely sentiment, and we'll pull over the user ID. User ID in there, add all the members, and we'll again do a distinct count on this. So count distinct, and I wanted to show that as a % of the total. So right away we can see 94% of people are saying positive things, 11.94% of people are saying negative things, and 5% of the responses don't actually appear. So what we're going to do is again filter out the negative the null sentiments. There we go. We've got negative and positive. In fact, we'll put that. We'll just change this into a table, and this is going to be our sentiment overview. So what we can see is now we've got two sheets. We've got sentiment, sentiment overview. So because we've got more than one sheet, we can start building a dashboard. At the bottom, we've got new dashboard. So just to show the theory of it, I'll pull over sentiment and I'll drop sentiment overview above it. I'm just dragging it and it's saying, do you want it to be on the left or the right or above or below? I'm going to put it above. And on the right here, I'm selecting fit. And this will just fit that text to the box. So fit the entire view. Down here, I'm going to do the same. Just clicked on it and now I'm going to select fit the entire view. I'm going to get rid of this key because green and red are quite self-explanatory. And on the left, I'm coming over to size. I'm going to change this to automatic. This just means when our dashboard's finished, whether someone opens up on an iPad or a laptop or a touchscreen thing, whatever it is, it'll just fit to the screen automatically. One of the key things within analytics is the ability to answer questions really quickly. So if I want to know, once this is built, if I want to know how many 16 to 24-year-olds enjoyed e-learning, what was their movement in their handling time, and what was the word they most commonly described it as, I should be able to answer that within seconds, rather than building lots of new tables and lots of new views. One of the ways we do that, because we've built the model the way we have and we've joined up the data at the start the way we have, we've taken the time to do that, is I can make all of these things relative to each other, every element we put on our dashboard. So what I'm doing is just I've clicked on sentiment overview, and this uses filter icon here. I'm going to click on that and turn it on. I'm not going to do that on the bottom one yet, although you can if you want. And what this means is if I click anything on the top here, so negative responses that we get. So 10.24% of all the responses we got, which were negative, were boring. Okay, the next one, the next one's boring, and 8.5% of our negative feedback said it was boring, it was rushed, it was long. Our positive feedback, again, we can say good, great, so on and so forth. So we can very quickly not only see the proportion of people who are leaving our courses saying good things and bad things, but we can see very easily of the people who were saying bad things, what specifically were they saying, what are the problems? And we can see if these problems hold true across age groups or learning formats, etc. So we're going to build another view, and in this view we're going to build confidence. So at the bottom I'm selecting a new worksheet. And I'm going to take our confidence measure, which said, I feel confident I can, that I have knowledge of the topic, and we'll create. So I click to be, tick to the next, gone up to create. I'm going to say group. Okay, holding down the control key, I'm selecting 1, 2, and 3, and then clicking on group. I'm going to call that no confidence. 4 to 6, 4 to 6, we will group and we'll call low confidence. Probably put a W in here. 7 and 8, we will group and we'll call confident. And 9 and 10, let's group them together and call them very confident. And what that's done is created a new thing that we can play with within here. So it's taken everyone who's answered 1 to 3 and grouped them together into the low confidence bin and so on and so forth. And this paper clip here says we've got a group. So if I pull this up now to columns, what we can see is confident, low confident, no confident, etc. And again, we can take the number of user IDs, pop that into rows, turn that into a distinct count. And what we should see is most people come out saying very confident, some people come out confident, low confidence, no confidence, etc. Now, there we go. So I've just clicked on the sort button up here to go no confidence, low confidence, confident, very confident. Okay. Again, should we show that as a percentage of our learners? That would probably be useful. So clicking on the drop down here, I'm going to select quick table calculation and a percent of the total. So if I hover over these now, I know that 77% of people leaving any course or across any format say that they're very confident. 39% of people say that they're just confident, not very confident. I'm going to turn this into a table. So coming up to the Show Me button, selecting a table. Here it is. I'm going to resort this. Can't quite recall how to do it. There we go. So no confident, confident, etc. Now we can put colours on these confidence bands if we want. If we wanted to do that, we would just take our confidence groups that we've created on the left here, drop it onto colour, and we've got our colours. If we want to change those colours, we can click on colour, say edit colours. Let's again make very confident green, confident. We'll go with light blue, low confidence orange, and why not be really predictable, make no confidence red. There we are. There's a pretty cool overview of how our learners feel. So I should have renamed that sheet. Confidence. Coming back to our dashboard, I'm going to pop confidence over to the left here. Again, I'm just going to fit that to the box, fit the entire view. And I'm going to get rid of the key because we've got plain English in here. It says no confidence, low confidence. So we don't really need this key. Again, if I select this box and turn on the filter, I can now do things such as say, if I select unselect negative and say no confidence. So actually, although overall for our population, 12.9% of people are coming out saying bad things about us. If I select no confidence, I can see it's 65% of people coming out saying bad things. From the very confident population, I can see it's 97% of people come out. So for the people who come out saying no confidence, it's poor, it was confusing, and it was boring. Okay, that's quite interesting. For the very confident people, it was generally good, informative, excellent. It was fun, etc. So right away, we're starting to play about with these things. So of the people who gave negative feedback, we can see what proportion of them were not confident. I imagine it's high. I think I clicked on there. It was 7.1% of people versus 1.41. So that starts giving us some insight and some conversations we can have with the business around the experience and the knowledge transfer that we have within the business. Pretty important stuff to be able to see. Something else we want to know with the confidence is we want to know why people feel the way that they do. So I'm going to set up a new worksheet again and come up to say to the field that says why do you say that. I'm simply going to pull this over here into rows, add all members. It's always a slightly tricky one to do, so it might take me a couple of times to do it. I'm going to also take the why do you say that and put it on text down here. And then coming back up the top to the why do you say that, this is now a header because we've got it in text. And I'm going to say don't show the header. So I'm just going to uncheck this box. And that just gives us a single row of the feedback. I'm going to call this confidence verbatim. Again, let's pop that on the dashboard and we'll pop that underneath the confidence. So what I can do is start to drill in to say, okay, of the people who had no confidence, I know 65% of them came out saying negative things. I know it was poor and it was confusing. Specifically, it was a short presentation of features of the sound box. It makes it difficult to take in a normal working environment. And this person said a 30-minute brief on a new product isn't the best way to make us believe in this product. Any questions asked were specific to retentions, were not answered. So that was a trainer piece. So right away we can see why people are feeling the way they're feeling, why they've not taken on the information that we wanted them to take on. We can filter these comments now by negative. People said negative things, positive things, etc. If we turn on the the filter for sentiment. Of course, we can then click on these words and see when people said it was fun, what did that do to confidence, what did that do to, why did they feel the way they felt, and so on and so forth. So that's some pretty cool analytics, but of course the million-dollar question is all about how can we put performance in here, right? And how does performance relate to confidence? How does it relate to experience? How does that relate to age, tenure of our learners, so on and so forth? So to look at the performance, we have to create some variables essentially, and the variables I use to look at performance is I look at 4 weeks. The performance 4 weeks pre someone going on training and their performance 4 weeks post. Now it's really complicated because any training might last for months, right? We might have hundreds of people going through a training event which lasts months. So we might have someone going through in March and someone else going through in May. Now, what we need to do for the person going through it in March is take 4 weeks prior to them going through it in March and 4 weeks subsequent. And for the people going through it in May, take 4 weeks prior to them going through and 4 weeks subsequent. And of course, these are different date ranges. So the way we capture those ranges so that regardless of when anyone goes through training, and we see the impact of pre and post training for everyone regardless of when they went through, I'm going to create some variables which simply capture that moment in time, if you like. So I've just come to create a new worksheet. I'm going to select why do you say that box, the drop down next to it. I can pick any box for this. Coming down to create calculated field. And I'm going to pop a formula in here, which you can pause this video and see what that formula is. And I'm going to call this AHT, no, I'm going to call it pre-timescale. What this variable does, so I'm going to type this in again. Good heavens, capitals. Pre-timescale is it takes the week of the feedback was given, and then it goes off and looks at the sheet of with the performance on it, and it says if the performance, if the week of the performance was greater than or equal to, less than or equal to this week minus 5 weeks ago, and less than or equal to, greater than 5 weeks ago and less than 1 week ago, so that gives us a 4 week window pre-training, then return that information. Okay, really clumsy way of saying it. Copy in the formula and hopefully it makes sense. Drop me a note if it doesn't. So I'm going to click OK on this at the bottom. I'm then going to post in, create a similar variable for the after learning timescale, which does the opposite. So create calculated field, just paste over there, and we'll call this post timescale. I learned from my mistakes, so I've put it in lowercase. And this says where the week is greater than this week, or the week of the learning, and it's less than the week of the learning plus 5 weeks, return the data. And this is where it's very important. We've got the numerator and denominator. So we can now look at performance for every learner, regardless of their course, regardless of their learning format, pre and post the day that they gave us that feedback for a period of 4 weeks, which is quite cool. Now, I'm also going to start calculating our handling time. And handling time in this instance is the number of seconds taken on a call divided by the number of calls. So again, I'm going to select a field, use the drop down, come to create calculated field, and I'm going to paste in a formula which you might want to pause. And essentially what this says is, so get rid of that, AHT before, at the top, sorry, I put that in lowercase, is return the duration of the calls if the condition meets pre-timescale. So that's this thing here that we've just made. So where the time is 4 weeks pre-training, return the number of calls and divide that by the number of calls where it's also within that time period. Okay, so I'm going to click on OK here. and that will tell me the average time spent on a call for all of our learners pre any training. What I want to know, of course, is what was that performance metric after training. So I'm going to select this field here, come to create, go to calculated field, and here's another variable I'm putting in, which is just exactly the same as the previous variable, except it's post timescale field I'm using here rather than the pre timescale. So at the top here, I'll call it post timescale. This is as difficult as this stuff gets. So this is telling me at the bottom that the calculation contains errors. So if I start typing in here, we'll see what those errors are. So I started typing in post timescale, and I'm selecting that. I shall come over here and type in post timescale. Still got errors there. Why am I getting errors? I can select here to tell me. Field name post timescale already exists. Sorry, I should have called the AHT post. It's late here, right? And then I'm going to select OK. Now, unsurprisingly, if I pull in this AHT after, what it's going to do is calculate on the fly thousands and thousands, and in fact tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of records to look at everyone who was trained and what was their performance. So actually, before people went through training, a call took 815 seconds on average. After training, it took 804 seconds. So that's an improvement. It's taken less time, and that's removed costs from the business. In this specific case, 1 second is equal to 4 full-time employees in a contact center. So I can instantly have a conversation with our finance department and our stakeholders around having saved 40 full-time employees through training. To make it easier to see that difference, we're going to create one last variable within here, and that's just going to calculate the difference between pre-training and post-training. So coming on to one of the fields over here, I'm going to select create a calculation. Very easy calculation, which says take the field we created, which is AHT post, minus off AHT pre, and that's our difference. So we'll call it AHT movement. Okay, what's the error at the bottom? Undefined field. Okay, this field's not quite right. AHT before is what I called it. Okay. So we now have AHT movement at the bottom here. I can pull this over to underneath the post and pre, and there we are. 11.4 seconds is the delta between the two. So actually, I'm going to put before above post simply because it reads a bit better. And there we are. That's our metric. Now, of course, we use any number of metrics in here. We can look at sales, we can look at absenteeism, we can look at sickness rates, we can look at transfer rates, or whatever we want. The important thing is having the numerator and denominator and having them in that format where every column in the Excel workbook or whatever output you get is either a numerator or a denominator, and that we have the user ID in there and that we've got a date in there. Very simple. So if we pull that onto our dashboard now, for instance, I should have called that metrics actually, and we'll call it AHT. Come to our dashboard, we'll pull this on. I'm going to pop this right in the middle because I think it's a pretty important metric, and I'll fit that to the entire view. What we can have here is a very rudimentary dashboard that allows us to see the overall, for all our training and all of our cohorts within here, the time to handle a call came down by 11 seconds. Was that more or less for people who left without confidence? Actually, it came down more for people without confidence than the average. It only came down by 14 seconds for people who were very confident. Now, bearing in mind that not every course that's in here just now was designed to affect AHT, this is simply to illustrate that we can look at the impact of the positive and negative sentiment and what people have said against metrics. So if we start to pop in here, for instance, the, in fact, I'm going to create another little chart. So a new worksheet in here. Let's pull over the experiential stuff from our learners. So I'm going to pull up a field in here called how did you find the experience? Using the drop down, it's summed it all, and I'm going to change this to an average. So this is on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you find the experience? On average, it's 8.8. And I'm also going to pull over to here. Obviously, we can pull everything over here. We can see how their experience was by the word they used to describe it. But in this case, or what their business area is, perhaps if we're using a HR file, or if we're using, again, a HR file, we can look at site by site. This might be Sheffield, Livingston, Liverpool, etc. But we're going to look at it by age. There we are. And I'll make that a chart that goes up the way. Sorry, it's the wrong one. Go back to where I was, and using this little icon up here, I'm going to switch it round. There we go. Good. So on our dashboard, I'm going to stick that in. Underneath the HT, I'll call this one age. Obviously, we would spend a lot more time beautifying the dashboard to make it look better for our stakeholders. But if I turn on the filters here, I can see, okay, what did 18 to 24-year-olds, how did they rate the experience? How many of those thought it was a negative experience? 9.62%. What about our older people, or people over 60 years old? It's 9.93, of which their handling time came down by 7.7%. For the younger people, it came down by 14%. So our learning seems more effective on our younger learners than our older learners. We can start to see our older learners saying the same things as our younger learners. So top 3 for older learners are great, informative, good, and for our younger learners, it's probably similar. It's good, informative, great, and fun. So by holding down Control, I can actually select under 40s by selecting all 3 of these bars. I'm not sure if I've clicked on the third one there. I have. So our under 40s gave 11.7% negative feedback, and this was their average, and this is the why they feel the way they feel. And our over 60s, of course, if we do the opposite, we hold down the Control key and select this population. Again, we can look at them and start to see, okay, there's a difference. Why is there a difference? Does that lie in our low confidence or high confidence cohorts within there? That's quite interesting. Within the LMS data you might have available to you, which you might join on your data source as part of your model, and I've got it as part of this model, we've got the learning type in there. What type of learning was it, or the course format? So if I come over to this doesn't really matter what one I use, I'll use the sentiment field, and within there I'm going to pull in what type of learning experience was it into the filters box. I'm going to select everything except nulls. There are simply some nulls there because when we started the survey we didn't ask that question, so we got responses where nobody actually entered anything. And that now allows us to come back to our dashboard, come up to analysis field I've gone into, come down to filters. I'm going to say, I'm on the wrong one over here. I wanted to use sentiment, analysis, filters, and use what type of learning experience was it. So again, we can slice this by learning format. So for instance, if I want to say overall our learners give 12% negative comments around what they learn. If we're only looking at classroom, I'm going to select this, use the drop down and say apply to all related data sources. That's quite important. So what this will do is apply to all of our data rather than just the worksheet we put the filter on. Within a classroom, only 5% of people said negative things. Within e-learning, If I select that, it's 13%. So actually 3 times as many people are coming out of e-learning saying negative things as classroom, right? So that's a massive difference. But again, we can start drilling down on this and saying, is that different for 18 to 24-year-olds? Is it different for based on confidence banding? We can form a hypothesis and then we can test these. So that's a very basic dashboard to interact and answer questions. If I wanted to know how 18 to 24-year-olds think of e-learning who have low confidence, what did that do to their metric? I'll select 18 to 24, no confidence. I'll select e-learning, and I know that their handling time came down by 62 seconds. So that's fantastic. So we can play about creating lots and lots of different worksheets and simply pulling things over and seeing what they do. So if I say, what site are you based at, and the HT movement, average movement, I can say, how did performance shift by site? Okay, within the calendar data down here, we've got months. So we can say, how did metrics move by month or by week? I can say, how did the metric move by the word people described? Okay, so we can start to say what descriptive words are important. So it came down a lot with all right and adequate. So when a course is misspelled adequate, it comes down a lot. I saw a spike there. Going back to it, average actually is a bad thing. So where a course is average, handling time went through the roof. That's exactly what we don't want. If I come along final where it went down a lot, constructive, where people have described it as constructive, it's come down. So we can start using these to inform our design principles when we're designing learning. I'm now just doing some ad hoc analysis on these worksheets. Our stakeholders might see this dashboard, which we beautify and colour and put lots of nice pictures on. This is a bit text and number heavy, but we can do things like we can play time series. So what I'm going to do just now is do a quick animation using some shapes and whatnot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how confident people feel and how metrics. We've shown how to do that, but this is just a bit of a fun one to do. So I'm going to take the average of their confidence. I'm going to take the average of their experience. And what we can see up here is 8.4 out of 10 on average for their experience, 8.7 out of 10 for their confidence. Using these cool little things over here again, if I put onto there and say, what site are you based at, drop it on colour, we'll get a little colour for every site. What we're going to pull over there, however, is the type of learning. I'm going to put that onto shape. I'll get rid of that colour one just by dragging it off. So what type of learning was it? Pulling that over, dropping it onto shape. And that should hopefully give us a different shape for each type of learning. I've got it filtered to e-learning on the dashboard, of course, so let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of this filter on the AT age and on the confidence as well. That's obviously going to skew our results. Coming back to sheet 8, so here we are, here's all our different things. So this is a little square, so our nulls down here, which we'll get rid of. Edit filter, select from list, everything apart from null, because that's just frankly quite boring. We'll apply that. So down here we've got e-learning, which under indexes for both confidence and experience, and up here over indexing for both we've got classroom. Okay, that's quite interesting. If I show that to a stakeholder, they might say, yeah, but we had a lot of people going through one course online or one online course, and that's pulled the figures down. Overall, people love it. The general feedback we get is they love it, so ignore that result. What I want to do is prove or disprove that statement. So I'm coming over, double clicking on the axis over here. Just to make it a bit clearer, I'm going to select on fixed and start this off at 7 and end it at 10. This seems quite sensible. And at the bottom here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start it at 7 and end it at 10. That just makes it a bit clearer, splits these things out, and all of our data points are within this area. I'm also going to select shape on here. I'm going to click it, and I've preloaded some graphics into Tableau. So I can select from default That's quite easy to do. I'm going to select formats, and for cell-led, I'm going to put a manager on there for classroom. I'm going to put a teacher at a blackboard for comms. It's going to be a document for e-learning is computer. Experience zones is a little science kit. Peer-to-peer, I'll just leave it as it is because I don't have enough images I've put in. So I'll apply that. And here we go. So we can see we've got little images for each of these things. Now, of course, we didn't have the same number of people going through e-learning as we did just receiving a comms or going through an experience zone. So I'm going to take this user ID again, drop that onto size. I'll take a moment to calculate that. And then coming down to size, using the drop down to change this to a count of the distinct people or the distinct user IDs within each bucket. Okay, so we had most of our people went through classroom or e-learning. Very few people over here went through peer-to-peer learning, experience zones, and cell-led things. Coming over to this key over here, I'm going to edit the sizes and just make them a little bit bigger. Okay, there we are. So again, we said we wanted to prove or disprove whether e-learning was skewed by one set of results on one day for one course. This is where the animations come in quite cool in analytics software. So if I take the start date here, this is the date where people gave us feedback, and pull it up to pages, what I'll do is create this graph for every day that someone gave feedback. It's defaulted it to aggregating it to year. I'm going to actually do it by the exact date. What else am I going to do? So this is day one. On the 20th of April 2017, we had 4 responses from a classroom course. Okay, we don't see any other data for any other days. Down in the bottom here, we have a transport. These 3 boxes here are the speed we want to play at. So I'm going to go on fast. It's not very fast, but it's faster than if we don't do it. I'm going to select show history as well and use the drop down next to show history to show the history marks for every field. Okay. If I now play this, I'm hoping it will do what I want it to do. Is we'll start seeing dots appearing on the screen, and this is every day the responses we get through from our learners in terms of their feedback. And the size of the bubble, of course, is how many people gave us feedback, and its position on the chart is whether that feedback was positive or negative. So broadly speaking, green is classroom, purple is e-learning, and the rest is other things. But we're really interested in the greens and purples here. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop this. I'm going to change this filter to just the greens and purples, because that was the question of is classroom better than e-learning? So let's answer that specific question, and we'll just keep playing it from there. And we'll see what happens over the course of a year. Already we're starting to see a pattern emerge that the purples tend to be at the bottom and the greens tend to be at the top. So this wasn't one day or one course or one fluke. It is actually over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of data points that's come through. Hopefully we can narrate to our stakeholders as they're watching this. We're saying in February we were running whatever course, and put flesh on the bones as it plays out. Once this is finished running, we're nearly at the end there. We can very quickly throw on lines to show us where the averages are across all of our feedback and see whether one over indexes or under indexes. But I think the picture's quite clear there. Okay, very nearly at the end. There we go. So within this analytics bit at the top here, I'm simply going to pull the average line over here onto table, drop it in, and we'll see that actually this is good stuff at the top, this is bad stuff at the bottom, mostly green, mostly purple. So we've done a piece of analysis around whether classroom's better than e-learning. Now we know that e-learning is not as good as classroom from an experiential point of view, so we can then start to in terms of KPIs, people might enjoy it less, but do we get better results? So that's an overview of the SIMPLE methodology. And the SIMPLE methodology is basically asking 3 questions for the feedback for every learning event, regardless of when you're asking, for what format you're asking, for what course you're asking. Everything is always those 3 questions, because it means we can look at things over time and we can compare things. It's about getting one file with your performance metrics in it, with the numerator and denominator. So that's the SIMPLE method. We've looked at Tableau, how to navigate it, and hopefully you've picked up some experience within there. And we've also looked at analytics, and this is about the self-serve capabilities, how we can give this to our stakeholders and allow them to look at it themselves. So if I put this on full screen, this might be more like a stakeholder sees it, and they can then explore it to their leisure. We might have filters over here for course, so if they wanted to know how was my whatever course, they just select that and they can see instantly what proportion of age groups went through it, what did those age groups say, what happened with the business metric on the back of it, how many people felt left feeling confident, etc. Any questions, drop me a note and I shall try my best to clarify. Right, whistle stop tour. Thank you.